Look at all those people.
Hey, everyone.
Wow.
Hello. And Eric.
Hey,
Oh,
Marcy.
two of my favorite people ever.
Marcy, look, all these people we
And
know.
Liz and Allison.
I knew I should have showered. Shit.
Oh, stop.
We can't smell you. And you
Hi,
look fabulous.
Philip. I haven't seen you in so long. I hope you're well.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Oh, I love your background, Fran. That's great.
Thanks.
Hey, Judy, I still miss you.
Nice.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, I'm love seeing your work, dude. So nice to see you, Steve.
Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone tonight. Welcome to SF Camerawork. Welcome to tonight's Artist Toolkit series event. We're so incredibly grateful that you've joined us tonight on a Thursday evening on Zoom. I know there's lots of other places that you guys can be, so I always appreciate when you tune in here. And I think we have a really informative session for you guys tonight. We've got the amazing Jastrab and Judy Walgren here with us, who are going to share a whole bunch of information about juried shows. So you guys are going to leave here, hopefully, with lots of tips in your toolkit. And we're very excited about it. Okay. So for just housekeeping rules, you guys are more than welcome to keep your video screens on. We encourage it. I love seeing your guys' faces. But as Judy and Anne are presenting tonight, if you could just keep yourself on mute, and I will also be going through and muting if you happen to unmute yourself, so that we can really hear from Judy and Anne what they have to share with us. So with that, let's get to it. Anne and Judy, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce each other.
Woohoo! Well, I'm going to start with Anne Jastrab, who is my sister, who I love. She's now the executive director at the Center for Photographic Art down in Carmel. And before that, I think most people here probably remember her being, I don't even know, it says that she was the gallery manager of Reiko, which is just not true, and was the superstar, amazing human that kind of made the soul of Reiko, along with many of you here. I just, I met Anne right when I moved to San Francisco, where I was the director of photography at the Chronicle and had a fundraiser for a freelancer who had a brain tumor. And
Judy's freezing.
The other, I got muted. Mark Merman, I was trying to organize a fundraiser, and Mark Merman said, "Oh, you gotta invite Anne Jastrab." And I'm like, okay, who's Anne? And I'll tell you what, we've been thick as thieves, literally ever since that fateful night. So
true.
I'm super excited to be here with all of you, but also with Anne. So thanks.
Love you. I love you. Well, Judy, it's actually ironic that tonight we're doing this talk because a mere 3 years ago today, she left us to move to Michigan. So Judy Walgren is a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist and former director of photography at the San Francisco Chronicle. Now she is the associate director for the Michigan State School of Journalism, where she teaches photojournalism, documentary photography, and immersive media. And I'm so glad you got that job, but I'm so sad you got that job. It's like a double-edged sword. But when Judy and I met, we started doing this crazy thing, like jurying shows together. We did a lot of collaborative exhibitions together, like at City Hall and at Reiko. And I just want to say this, one of my favorite Judy memories, and then we'll stop talking about how fun it was. We were invited to speak at the Battery Club. Stephen McLaren had this great artist lecture series, like photography lecture series, and invited us to speak. And I was like, please God, let me go first. Please God, let me go first. But of course, Judy went first. And she was like, I don't need this mic, and like tossed it and then blew the place up with this amazing like year-end pictures from the San Francisco Chronicle, where she kind of like shamed everybody in the room. It was amazing, but you did it so beautifully. It was amazing. It was amazing. And then everyone left when it was my turn to speak, but it was cool.
That's totally lie.
We were a great team, and I miss you dearly. But Judy went and she did her MFA while she was being the director of photography at the Chronicle, and then became a teacher. So we miss you terribly. And thank you, Christina and SF Camerawork, for having me. I just finished my board term after 3 years, so I'm not on the Camerawork board anymore. I've rolled off, but I'm here. I'm still here, still helping. So we're gonna talk about jury shows. We've juried a lot of shows together and separately. So Judy's gonna share our screen.
So I'm Sharon, and I want you guys to know, I hope you can still see it. Oops, sorry. Wait, sorry. Present. Let me make sure it'll move. Yeah. So we're here to answer your questions, basically. That's why you all are here, I would say, more than anything. Like, we're going to give you just kind of a brief overview, but like slam us with questions, because that's what I think we're the best at, is answering your questions so that you feel like you're getting your time and money worth. Okay.
And we're not going off on tangents. You
Oh
gotta
yeah,
keep it straight and
we
narrow.
will. And what's our safe word? If we get too far in the weeds, like Eric, you're gonna have to say like tortoise shell or
man.
ostrich egg or something. Just give us something, or like start strangling
It
yourself.
depends on the tangent, because if it's tortoise shell might be part of your tangent. I know you two.
True.
All right.
You'll be the moderator. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. You too, Steve Raskin. All right. So here it is. Then, oops, sorry. Let me get back here. So we thought we would just start off with, what do jurors look for, right? And Anne, if you want to, I'll just read this one or go through this one, and then you can hop in. So emotional impact. And obviously I'm a photojournalist and a documentary photographer. So I'm super focused on emotional impact. I want to just feel something when I look at an image. Concept, creativity, storytelling, looking for moments, composition, and then of course, again, for me, sequencing is utmost importance. And was there anything you wanted to add to that?
It was funny when Judy asked me the question, I was like, good pictures. She was like, yeah, you got to elaborate. Because there is, when you're in the platforms applying and submitting your pictures, there's all those fields that you have to enter. And Judy was like, does it really matter what the medium is? And it actually, for me, because I come from a traditional darkroom background, to me, like, actually type of print does matter to me. But I'm mostly concerned about like, what does the image say? What's happening inside the frame? Yeah, a good picture, but that includes everything from the subject. I mean, well, we could go on about that, but yeah.
I think the important takeaway is that for Anne, she's super analog and focused on that, and I'm super documentary. And so we'll have a tip sheet too. So like, know who your jurors are, do some research on them.
Yeah.
Right. And so we came up with a case study for a show that we did together at Rayco in 2016. And Anne, I mean, I can't remember exactly how you came up with this idea. It was super brilliant. And it was like one of the best friggin' parties. Every one of Rayco's openings was like the best party of 1999. I don't know if you'll remember that, but.
It was great. So I wanted to do, because I taught for years the main photographic workshops and worked with all these great documentary photographers like Eugene Richards and Marilyn Mark. And I love documentary photography, and I don't think there's a lot of platforms to show it in commercial galleries, because maybe it's not so sellable, right, for a commercial gallery. But what better place than Rayco or a photography center or a nonprofit to show that type of work? And who better to jury that type of show with me than Judy, who's, Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist. So we did a call for entries called With Our Own Eyes. And it was an interesting thing, because we initially were just looking for, at least me in my mind, whenever I'm jurying, it's always like single image, single image, single image. But then when we did this call for entries, it turned out that there were a lot of whole projects we wanted to exhibit. So it actually ended up being much fewer artists, like many fewer artists, and a lot of series. So some people, we picked all 10 of their submissions, or 4 of their submissions, or 6 of their submissions. But there were still a number of people that had single images, like Hilary Duffy. She had all this work from Cuba, but this picture really stood out among her series. And I mean, like, what a moment. And
Yeah.
she since then has published a book of this work, which is really incredible.
Super good. Yeah. Oh my God.
Tracy Fish, we took all 10 pictures. This is like someone's work I didn't know at all. And this was a great thing I like about juried shows as a curator is I'm always like, oh, these are really interesting works that I don't know this artist. I'll go and research them. And then sometimes you end up like giving someone a solo show later down the line. If you're really, I mean, for me, that's one of the things I love about being a gallery director. It's like you have this opportunity to launch people's careers and to exhibit their work. And anyway, sorry, I'm like,
Well, and help them, right? So, Anne, I mean, that's something you did for so many, and you still do, thank God, is that you really help people shape and form their career. I mean, and there's nothing more satisfying, I don't think, than that ability.
Yeah, Michael Joseph, he had this long-term series on these kids that were like train jumpers, right? And so we took 4 of those and pretty intense group of pictures.
But what access, and just like for me, just gripping. And because I know what it takes to get access like this, it takes like commitment and diligence.
Yeah.
Melanie Metz.
And she was an undergraduate student, actually, when we took this work from her from Florida. She was going to school in Florida. And I didn't know her. Again, these are like a lot of these documentary people were unknown to me. Oh yeah, and Michael, the previous guy, he was riding the rails with those kids. Like he was definitely
in there.
Like modern day William Kennedy situation.
And when you're thinking about putting your work in and you're going to do multiple photos, think about how they look together. Like, I don't remember if these two went together, but man, I'll tell you what, diptychs and sequence, again, I'm going to just harp on sequencing. Even if you're just entering single photos, can really make your work shine. Oops, sorry. Okay, there we go. Oh, David.
Yeah, David Pace, he passed away in the fall of 2020. But he had a long-term project for 10 years. He was going to Burkina Faso and photographing there through a program that he started at Santa Clara University. So he had to talk about access, but he some great pictures. We have
super committed, right? Super committed, and wasn't just a drop-in, photojournalist, just kind of dropping in for a few days and leaving. Like, this is somewhere he went back and back and back to for decades.
Yeah.
Lauren Wells. I think we ran like 9,000 of her photos.
Yeah, I think we had 7 or 8 of hers, but she did a whole series on Coney Island, and it was like, holy crap, like these are really good. And this again is someone else that
now she's blown up, right? Now she's like super everywhere person. I love this.
And yeah, Ken, I mean, he's really funny. So that's the whole thing about documentary photography. Like, it's street photography, but then there's these really humorous moments. You can sort of, a la Elliot Erwitt. Like, I'm a sucker for those. And that's also the interesting thing about having 2 jurors. This is because Judy and I have had people sit in on our jurying just to see what the process is like. And in the olden days, you'd uncork a bottle of wine and be like, okay, let's do this. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, I love her. She's going through a divorce. And Judy's like, like, this isn't the Friends of Anne show. So she was like a great check for me. And so we had a lot of actually really interesting interactions, as you'll see in the next series of pictures that we're about to show. But this end, Nicole Jean Hill, she's actually a professor up at Humboldt. She ended up being our best of show for this long-term series she did on these young, I don't think they're boxers, they're like kickboxers or something. They're
like the MMA dude,
yeah.
People that just like beat the crap out of each other with their bare fists. It was incredible. And I really loved how her portraiture and how it mixed in with the more documentary style, candid. And it's very hard, right, to mix them. And she did it very eloquently, I would say.
And they were really like feminine. They were sort of different than a lot of pictures that were in the show. They really had a nice sensibility. Christina's unmuting because probably there's some questions in the chat. I see you, Christina. Go ahead.
For someone giving us the safe word in the chat.
I was like, I see some of these, and before we jump to the next project, I'll read some of them. Eduardo wants to know: do jurors consider artist statements important? Can you speak to that question?
Yeah. Well, in a massive juried show, like, there's, depending on what platform you're looking at, that like so, I mean, this is for me as a juror on the back end, like some platforms like Cafe Management, which probably most of you have suffered through using because it's the one a lot of organizations use. When the picture comes up on the screen for me as a juror, right above it is, and every single picture is the artist statement. So if I have any questions about what the project is about, I will read that thing word for word, especially if I'm like, what the hell is this about? And then I'm like, oh, look, conveniently, the whole top half of my screen is this artist statement. So it definitely, like, we're going to read it if it's accessible like that. Other platforms, it's kind of buried in a side menu. And so like Smarter Entry, you got to go find that information. And so only if I have some time and, then I'll dig in and get it. So, and then in Lens Culture, it's also really readily available. You can see it there sitting, looking at you. And so often the artist statement for me can be a make or break. If it's a terrible artist statement, I'm like, oh, fuck you. And then I just, no, which is amazing. So that it's the power of the word. Like you want to, I'd say it matters for sure, especially if someone has access to it and they can read it. So
yeah, it can actually make the difference between being in and out. Like ultimately the image is going to be the supreme, I don't want to genderify it, but it is the image. But let's say it comes is the Pulitzer is like this too, right? It usually you have such great work, it'll come down to 2 photos and you only have room for one. The artist statement or the caption information can take it from, yes to no. So, yeah. And we've got this in a tip as well. Have someone read over your artist statement for sure, because if you have a bunch of typos, like it's just super critical that your artist statement doesn't have to be 9,000. It should be short and concise.
Yeah.
But it also should be not full of typos and
right. You don't need fancy.
Like my work. Yeah. Not cutesy pie,
Because I will say this was, I know certain things we're not supposed to talk about here in this forum today, but I'm not going to.
Don't do it.
Not doing it, but there was a series of pictures that I saw that was it didn't make any sense to me. It was like these solarized pictures of this naked man holding a taxidermied animal. And I was like, why am I even looking at this? And then I read the artist statement, and the deer was like a surrogate for his dead wife who had died of cancer. And then I was like, what? And then I was like, yes, I just went for it. I was so moved by his words and his heartbreak. And then then I was like, okay, like the writing was so good. It was a yes. So
until I came in.
Thank God for friends. Okay, go on.
Okay.
So Christina's got another.
I got another question, which is in like the realm of, is the artist statement important? Also, can you speak a little bit about titles? Are titles important? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, because it's interesting. We'll get to these pictures we put later in the slideshow, pictures that actually got like best of show awards. And actually the majority of them are untitled, which is interesting for what I'm thinking ahead to. But sometimes I think caption, especially depending what platform you're looking at, you see the picture and then the title's right there. So that can be really impactful. I mean, it depends on the work. If it's, certain work can be more neutral, I think, with the titles, but certain work needs descriptors. So
and I'm super focused on captions, right? Again, just given my background. So if it's a documentary, if it's a body of work and it's documentary style, you should have your captions are your artist statement, really. You know what I mean? And they should also be copy edited. Just make sure everything you do is copy edited. I can't hit that enough.
You can rely on peers, instructors, friends, people you trust. Judy, me. Certainly. I trust Judy to look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Christina might have another question. I can see it coming in the chat. Go ahead. Is there one more? Oh, no, they're answering each other.
Yeah, I bet they are. I bet they're in there. I bet, yeah.
They're like, they don't know what they're talking about. Let's go to the bar.
The bar, is it open yet there?
I don't know. Yeah.
We're all at home. The bar's always open.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right.
That's the
Right.
problem.
I did. Yeah, that is the problem. Let me have a little sip.
In your Yeti. All right, Anne, you want to talk about this, the perimeter of the world?
Oh yeah, so we did. So the thing at Reika, when I ran Reika, we used to do 2 jury shows a year, and one was, of course, this plastic camera show, and then we
Woohoo!
would do one other show every year that was jury show, just to generate some income for the photo center to keep it going. And I always want to do a different theme every year. So like one year we did portraiture, year we did still lives, one year we did landscape, one year we did the documentary, and then I thought, oh, like what else would a lot of people have images that would fit into? Because Stuart, who owned Reika, was like, let's do a new dystopia show. And I was like,
Oh no.
yeah, I'm like, Stuart, like, I love that idea. I don't think half the population knows what dystopian means. So let's move on. So we did a contemporary travel photography show, because I'd also seen, like when I do different jurying, I'd see all these fantastic pictures that would fit into that category. So Judy and I juried this show together, because it's always good to have someone who can check you a little bit. So it doesn't turn out to be, because I know a lot of people that I'm like, oh, it shouldn't be the Friends of Anne show. And I try to use platforms where you actually don't see the person's name, so that you don't know, which is much better. But anyway, we did this contemporary travel photography show. It actually ended up being like one of the best sellers at Reika.
And so did the documentary one.
Yeah. Guy Reynolds, who's also
he passed away. Really good friend of mine. He was a photo editor with me at the Dallas Morning News, and then just kind of freaked out and started shooting with plastic camera. And I didn't even know that he was a super worshiper of Anne Jastrab. Like I had no idea. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, I'm coming to stay with you in San Francisco.
so fun.
But like the shapes and the lines and the layering of this, as Sarah has heard me talk about ad nauseum, right, Sarah Windhills? And then, Anne, this was a classic Anne, yum, yum.
Yeah, a little platinum print. So the travel show had a lot of things that it was very varied, right?
Yeah.
Everything. This picture sold immediately, which was amazing to me, but.
So perfect, right? How do you photograph wolves that perfectly? Or I don't know if
close up.
Yeah, I mean, oh, wow, just really interesting. Just beautiful.
Monica Donovan. This picture is in our upcoming show. This picture is legs. This picture keeps going.
Oh, at CPA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roby check there 40. Really good. I don't know. This is the classic Kathmandu kind of area that actually was destroyed by the earthquake there years ago.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but what an amazing moment. Talk about a moment,
Yeah.
That, and what about that? I mean, geez. It's incredible.
So this is an interesting show for Judy and I to jury, because I tend to, Judy likes really beautiful pictures and I tend to like more gory ones. So we had to like have a little balance. Be like, okay, you get that beautiful one, I'll get this gory one, and we'll keep going. Not so much with
your back in the day. I'm done with no, I'm just kidding. So we're gonna make this. We're gonna drop this in the chat. I'm gonna download it and just drop it in the chat before we bail tonight, so you all can have these resource slides. You can actually, I'll put the link to it and you can check it out anytime you want. But we just thought it might be interesting to talk briefly about what and where, where to enter your work and how to decide, and what to enter. So do your research, right? So enter competitions that align with your theme or your genre. So don't stick in something to a documentary photography show that is just a still life of your thumbnail, unless it's a story about your thumbnail and how you lost it and it took 20 years for it to grow back and we're riveted by it, which we will not be. And then check to see what the curator has selected in exhibitions in the past. So go and do your research, Google that person, see what else they've juried. If you're super competitive, like I am, if I want to get in a show, I'm like, all over it. And then make sure it's a wise investment, right? Like, I mean, you want to support nonprofit. Like I want to pay people like SF Camerawork to enter their forecast show because I want to support Christina and what her team is doing or what my friend Ann is doing, right? I want to support them. So just know that, I mean, think about that. It's an investment, right? What's your goal, right? So do you want to have exposure? Then you're going to want to enter visual, what's the right word? Things that lots of people are going to look at, things, right? Do you want to make some cha-ching? That's not so easy. But whatever, if you want a Sony camera or whatever, for me, it's tenure, right? I mean, I'm not on that track, but like a lot of people need to get their work exhibited or accepted into juried shows, peer-reviewed shows to work on their tenure. And then again, support brick and mortar nonprofit organizations such as this one. And then where do you want to see your work, right? Do you want to, what's the location? And so something I did when I was first doing this is I would just apply like a crack addict to everything in that cafe. What is that? And that one you were talking about, the one that
management.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, this is amazing. And I just like vomited like applications. But then like one is in Podunk, Wisconsin. Another one's in, like friggin' Wyoming in the middle of nowhere. I didn't realize that. And then you have to ship, you have to print and frame and ship your work, So then I was like, okay, if it's California within, 25 miles, then I would enter it.
And also, I mean, when I was, I used to, when I finished graduate school and I was first teaching in Maine, I had a budget, right? I had an annual budget for jury shows because you can't enter them all. Unless you have a trust fund, right? You can't do it. So, I mean, my budget was $200 for the year. And that back then I had to make slides, right? Like 35mm slides with tungsten 64. And then you'd send the slides to the different places. But but the shows then were like $20 a pop. So I could enter 10 a year. So to be really selective, like like you said, where do you want to be? I want to get a gallery. I want a museum. Like I want that. That's what I wanted, the recognition. So definitely set a budget and think about, like don't go beyond your means because you do that. Shipping is a killer.
It is a killer. And then also group show versus solo, right? So again, I was spamming the group show world and now I need solo shows, right? So the group shows, I'm done with that. Like I want bigger shows unless I'm supporting an amazing nonprofit photo organization such as SF Camerawork.
And the Center for Photographic Art.
And CPA, yeah. And then another thing that's pretty important too is to have different, if you have multiple images, have your 3 image kind of yum, and then your 10. And then for documentary work, you're always going to want to have a 15 to 20 photo edit of your project, because that's what like things like the Pulitzer and the Guggenheim, like you want to have a larger edit if you have a body of work that you've created over the years. Are there any questions, Christina, now because I think we'll go to the next one about where to look.
There's one that just popped up from Stephen Raskin that says group shows are broadly promoted. How does one find solo shows without an in?
That's a great question, Anne.
Well, this was this amazing thing that happened for us. We do this annual show, this international juried show. And we have a different juror every year. And last year, we had Allie Smithson, which was great. And she did, she put the winning photographs online and did a big expose about the winner. The year before, Paula Tagnarelli from the Griffin Museum outside of Boston, she was our juror. And she offered as a prize, separate from all the money we were giving out like $7,000 in cash. She offered a solo show to someone at her museum, like here, like I'm going to offer a solo show. So some of these competitions will have awards like that, like the Ching Gallery in New York. They do this annual competition called Fresh. And one of the awards is they'll actually take on an artist to represent. It's like, oh, okay, I'll enter that. So I think you have to look at what the prizes are in the various places. There are ones that are giving away solo shows, which is crazy. I mean, it's not crazy, it's great. We offer artist grants, and one of the artist grants we offer, actually Camerawork did this too, they had an artist grant that someone gets a solo show with the money. And so we did the same thing, but we also found that there were we actually ended up giving out 5 grants. We're giving 3 shows with the grant money. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
there.
great. It's
Yeah.
great.
That's so one thing. This is the places to look, which kind of
Yeah.
segues right into here, because I
Right.
think with this first entry here, like where do you find these opportunities? Like Lens Scratch, which is lensscratch.com, they have a resource tab, and underneath there's every juried competition, there's every so there's every call for entries, there's every grant opportunity, there's every magazine up. I mean, it's the Eileen really keeps that tab up to date. Fantastic. But there you can find it and find kind of, is someone offering a solo show award? Like Critical Mass actually offers a prize in their competition of a solo show to one person from that. And that's chosen, you don't even have to even make the top 50 to get that award. Like it's given separately. And I've definitely, as a juror for Critical Mass, picked I picked Ellen Hoyland out of that bunch to give her a solo show, which was her first solo show in America. And I never met her. I just saw the work in that competition. I was like, this is great. And
So that's another good thing, right? Look and see who's jurying it and see if they have that ability, right? And the same thing goes for like Photo Fest or Palm Beach, even though Palm Springs or whatever it is. Yeah, that one. Any of the portfolio reviews, not all of them, right? Some of them are just, I don't know, but
Photo Fest has, when you go to Photo Fest, they do have the new
High level.
discoveries. They have new discovery shows. They'll pick 6 or 10 of the reviewers to pick 6 or 10 artists to choose as the new discoveries for that year, and they'll exhibit them in a solo show the next year when the next Photo Fest happens, or the next biennial. And so then you'll get to see the work. So it's part of the slog of getting your work out there. But I think jury shows, like who should apply to jury shows? I mean, I think everyone, no, but I think it depends on the prize, like what you're gonna get from it. But I think people just starting out who don't have gallery representation, or they want to, get some exposure and get their work seen. But again, within reason, like you don't want to be paying $100 for a call for entries that's only online or something like that's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Like people like Anne who would go to these portfolio reviews and jury these shows, she would then pluck people out and show them.
Yeah.
And still does. So like that's something just to note, right? Is that you might be applying to a group show, but there is a high level, there is a chance, I can't say high level, there's a chance that from that you might glean.
I've definitely built shows off work I've seen at juried shows and off portfolio reviews, because you have, you see all this work coming up in, like, I have a secret file I keep of work I really like. And I used to, well, anyway, there's a process that I do where I pull work out that I like, and it goes into this folder on my desktop, and I'm looking at it, and I'll build shows around it. Like, oh, look at all these, like I did this reimagined landscape show in the fall at CPA that, it was like 8 women photographers whose work I'd seen in different places. And I was like, oh, let's put all that together. Like, that's a great show. So you just, you don't know what's going to come from it. Me, look, Liz Hiscock was in my show. It's true.
Awesome. And then Anne, you put this together. So juried exhibition, these are the different kinds, right? Call for work, call for entry is posted. You could also have a juror who curates the exhibition from the submissions, right? You can have a magazine book gallery submission like Aperture or British Journal of Photography. And you can also submit your portfolio to magazines and publishers for possible publication, or to galleries for possible representation. So these are just different ways to, the key is to get your work seen, right? Like that's.
Yeah, like a lot of galleries used to have once a year you could submit, they'd have like an open portfolio review, but more and more it's like no unsolicited submissions. You just have to look and see who's got what. That's why jury shows, like you're like, oh, I've always wanted to get into I don't know, Frankel Gallery, like is someone from there jurying? Probably not, but let's pick something that's attainable. like the Deborah Klompching and Darren Ching are jurying our next show, and they have Klompching Gallery, and they're absolutely looking all the time for artists. That's why they do their fresh show every year, so they can like just get what they want, like it'll be sent to them, right? It's like,
I hope that answered your question, Steve. That was kind of long and roundabout, but like, your work definitely, yeah, you'll get a show. And so we put together some more tips here. So set deadlines, don't wait till the last minute to apply, like just put it on your,
Always times out. You'll be like, oh my God, it's 11 p.m. The deadline's at midnight. And then it's like, oh, fuck. And it's like slow and the wheels turning and 5,000 other people are applying at the same time. And then you missed it. It's so,
Yeah.
how did that happen? And then you just assume, oh, they're going to extend the deadline. They always extend the deadline. Well, guess what? They're not extending the deadline. You missed it. So definitely don't wait until 11 p.m. because half the time the deadline is actually 10:59 p.m. Mountain Time, and then you already missed it. It's like a heartbreak.
and Ann and I are not trust fund children yet, at least not that I know. And so go for that discounted early bird. It's just silly to blow $20 because you didn't have I'm a journalist, so deadlines are kind of like everything for me. Make sure that your work before you put it in is sequenced effectively. Make sure that you've got it all ready to go and lined up. Don't do it while you're doing the application.
And wait, and this is really important, and Judy and I both agree, like sequencing is king. Like the first picture, because depending on what the platform is, like you might see the pictures individually, or you might see them all come up together. And if the first picture is shitty and the second picture is shitty, you're not even gonna look at the other 8, or you're done. You're already dead in the water. So make sure if you have 10 pictures, put the first 3 should just kill the juror, right? And then you can have a little fun in the middle maybe. And then the last one should also be a killer because that's the last one they're going to look at. So they want that to be burned into your cerebral cortex. So
and then I would say the middle one too. So how I sequence is the most kick-ass photo is first. You put the second most kick-ass photo or classic ender last, and then you put the middle one just to wake them up.
Yeah.
If you have like, let's say 5 photos, that middle one, the sandwich meat. So you got the killer bread, made of boudin. And then you've got that portobello, yum, yum, and balsamic in the middle. And then the condiments are the 2 on either side, right?
But that first one, it's got to be the best one. It's funny because I talked to a lot of people and they're like, well, like I'll be looking through and I'm like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, what were you saving this for? Like, oh, I really wanted to spice it up at the end. It's like, no, I never would have even gotten to the end if you weren't sitting here watching me. Like, so that's.
So the thing is, what's cool about that, Ann, is that you're like letting people know things that they just don't know. Maybe that's not something intuitive, right? So have your captions ready before you apply, your captions, your titles.
Yep, don't be writing them into the field as the clock is ticking, right?
No,
like every minute. And then you're like, because then you don't have time to spell check it either, because you're doing it live. And then you forget the T in the, and then it's like he, and then you're like, what? But it didn't catch it because it's not misspelled. And then
you're drinking Chardonnay with Ann. That's
right. And then you're like, oh, this old Chardonnay from the fridge is delicious. Deadline, like.
And same thing with your artist statement, right? Have it ready to go before you do your application. And I just cracked up because we used to play around with the Artie Bollocks artist statement generator. I don't know if y'all have ever done this, but it's friggin' hilarious. Like, you got to check it out. And I'll share this with you all so you can. And then the bottom one is actually a real artist statement generator, believe it or not, that a writer created. If you don't have all that like art school jargon, which is literally the only reason why I got the MFA, not really. So I could just add an ITY to the end of every word, right? Like visuality, positionality. And have your applications reviewed by someone, copy edit written material, make sure that anything you write, do it in a Google Doc, homies. Do it in a Google Doc, do it on a Word doc. Do not do it in the thing because invariably it's going to die. It'll crash. Something will crash and you will cry.
You will lost. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one is sign up for newsletters and alerts for organizations that you're interested in.
Yeah. Get on the Camerawork mailing list.
Yeah.
Become members of organizations that you support. So you can go to portfolio reviews, have people to work.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. On Lens Scratch's newsletter. Yeah. So this actually segues into this last little bit where we'll just throw all this stuff at you, and then we can just open up the floor for lots of questions that we hope we can answer.
If you have them.
As people who know RACO know about the International Juried Plastic Camera Show we did every year, and this is just like a a story of what can happen in a juried show. So I did the show for 10 years, and one year, this artist, James Rohan, he applied. He'd always have get one picture in the show. And then one year he applied with 10 amazing pictures. And I was like, huh? And so I called him. I never met him, never talked to him. I called him on the phone. I was like, listen, I want to take all 10, but then I have to not take 9 other people's work in the show. So what I could do is I could just put one picture in this show, and then next year you could be the featured artist in the plastic camera show. You could have 18 pictures in the show. And he was like, I'll take that deal. And so that was just from him applying to a juried show that he became the featured artist in that show. And he got the first main wall in the gallery. He got 18 pictures, and we sold 9 of them, which was amazing. And he got the postcard, he got the promo, he got an article in Lens Scratch, he got an article in the Chronicle. It just blew up for him from just entering the show. So that's the feel-good story of what could happen in a juried show. And he didn't, he didn't enter 10 pictures because he wanted that to happen. Anyway, so these are just some other selections from the plastic camera show of the year, because it's so fun. So this is one of Andrew's
Where is this
pictures.
guy landing? And this is with a plastic camera. Hello.
Yeah.
So amazing moment, and even interesting composition, right?
Yeah. This is one of those, I forget the name of this camera. Someone here shoots it though. It's one of those Lomo.
Very cool.
Super sampler maybe, or maybe it's a 9 one. So these are Marky Kaufman's, and these are really beautiful. She shoots with some sort of Ansco-Pix crazy plastic camera, but I love that she started gilding them. Really interesting. And then this is a way to work a light leak for anyone shooting crappy cameras out there. This Ryan Humphrey. Most people would have thrown this camera away with a light leak like this, but he's working it. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then what we have here, I just threw in some. So I work at the Center for Photographic Art, and we do an international juried show every year. So this is Shinya Masuda, who Paula Tagnorelli picked as the best of show image for the international juried show when she did it. And so the image that she picked was the one on the right. And then he ended up submitting, and he lives in Japan. He's let's talk about shipping costs, and they're beautiful, huge prints. But then the one on the right, he submitted to our members show this year, and Susan Bernstein picked it, and someone bought it, so I didn't have to ship it back. So I love that. So, and then Norma Cordova, Aline Smithson picked her as, when she was the juror for our international show, picked Norma as the winner, and so she got a $2,500 check, and she got a feature in Lens Scratch, and yeah, awesome, great work. And then Bootsy Holler, one year I juried, and now I know I should not jury a show for my own organization, but for the member jury show at CPA, I juried the show with Laura Sackett, and this is Bootsy Holler's picture. And this is the importance, I think, of looking at work in person, is this piece I loved online, and then it came to the gallery and it was gigantic. And it also had all these 3-dimensional pieces that sat above the print surface. So that mask she's wearing, her face was floating, and these pieces of the forest were floating, and it was exquisite. So, she got $1,000 as the members show best of show, and great, fantastic work. And then Ann Walker, Susan Bernstein was the juror for our member show this year. And Susan Bernstein, if you know her work, think about what her work looks like, right? She makes her own cameras, she makes her own lenses. And so she picked Ann Walker as her best of show. And so that's something to think about when you're picking your, if you're shooting a pinhole camera, oh, maybe I want to enter shows that Susan Bernstein's jurying, says maybe she'll like my work. She did pick a lot of work that was out of focus, which was interesting. So this was her best of show, and Ann Walker's is a gorgeous in person, gorgeous silver print made with an antique lens, and really lovely. So.
And this is very similar to Susan's work, right? It looks like her work. So that's why
in subject matter, but in the
in the feel
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we just, at the end of this, we put a few 6 different photographers whose work we have really liked and seen together over the years on juries that we're on annually and sporadically. So that will be at the end of the show. And then, so now questions, ding, 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 if you have any.
there's like 38 comments in the chat. That makes me
I
so
think
nervous.
Christina's just spamming them with links.
I was spamming with links. All good links though, links to calls and shows. We do have quite a few questions in here.
Good.
Fran has asked, can you talk about single image versus series? Is it better to do one or the other or both? Many calls for entries ask for either a single image or series.
You know, it depends on the competition. Like, is it for an exhibition? Is it for a publication? Like, I know All About Photo has they do a beautiful publication for every one of their contests. So it's definitely like a series you want to enter because they're going to print more than one image. You know, even when you're using a platform like Lens Culture, where you do enter single images, there are chances that whoever's jury is going to pick more than one. So I usually say, even if you're doing single image entry, to enter a cohesive series. So at least I know when I'm looking, if I see, you know, that someone has been working on a body of work, that I'll tend to pick one as opposed to someone, unless they're 5 amazing single, you know, images that are totally divergent. I usually, yeah, I'd say enter a series. Because it also gives the juror an idea of, you know, your vision.
What else do we got?
Yeah.
We have one question that's about kind of in the same genre. How cohesive does a body of work need to be? To me, sometimes if they're too cohesive, it can look like wallpaper.
I think that depends. I mean, I don't know. I definitely have seen images that look too similar, but then you just need to pick the best image. I think that's an editing call. Like, if you're like,
Yeah.
this tree or this exact same tree with more light on it, it's like, well, pick one, don't give me two. But if it's a story about, you know, like a series of landscape pictures, then, you know, I think they should all be landscapes. It shouldn't be like, oh, and here's this street shot from San Francisco in with like Yosemite. Like, that doesn't make sense. So,
Unless you're Wolfgang Tillmans and you're just a whack and you can do it and it works and people will pay you millions of bucks, you know.
right, yeah.
Be
But I think-
thoughtful about it, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
put things together that are obtuse, just be thoughtful about it and then be able to defend it, right? That's what I always say, is just know what you're doing and why you're doing it, you know?
Yeah. So I think there's a difference between cohesive and repetitive.
Yeah.
Like,
and
you don't want,
boring.
and boring and redundant. Like, you don't want
Right.
work pictures that are doing the same thing in the same portfolio. Like, no, like, and even like, we could have 2 portraits of 2 totally different people, but if they're shot the same way at the same angle, like, it's like, well, yeah. So I think that's a difference.
And then as far as the number of photos in a series, I mean, I would always say it starts at 4 and can go as far as I'm interested, right? Like, or the viewer is into it, really, you know? I mean, a series can be from 4 on.
Yeah.
I like 5 because you got the bread and the condiments in the middle and the protein, you know, but that's just, you know.
I used to shoot, when I was teaching, we'd always shoot for 10, but then you always have your 3 stars, you know, your 3 images that are, because a lot of these jury competitions, they ask for 3 or 5 images. So you should have that edit. This should be like the 3 killers that are ready to go. And I saw that Eric wrote, how important is it to repeatedly get work in front of the same jurors to build that recognition? Well, this is the thing, like, I remember all pictures. And so, like, every year that I would do the plastic camera show, same people would send the same pictures. I'm like, I rejected that last year. Well, guess what? I'm rejecting it again this year. So I wouldn't necessarily submit the same pictures to the same jurors. I mean, but I have juried in different places. Like, I juried the Photo Place Gallery in Vermont, and I juried at Praxis Gallery in Minneapolis. And then the same person sent me pictures one place and the other place. And I ended up taking the same picture in 2 different venues, but I was like, the shows are far enough apart and I loved the image so much that I was like, well, if it didn't sell in the first place, you should have the opportunity to sell that thing in the second place.
Well, Anne, here's a question. Is it cool if they email you? Like, I mean, if they see that, so since you already have a relationship with them, I'm just curious, right? Do you like email you and say, hey, what do you think? And
yeah, I'm cool. Like, people email me and be like, I know this is probably cheating, but I know you're jurying this and can I ask you, should I submit to it A? And should I submit what you've seen before? Do you want to see something new? And then, I'll definitely respond.
That's not, I don't think that's normal. So you should definitely know, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's not normal. Like someone else might be like, block. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding there. But, I mean, I'm the child of two therapists, which is
Oh my
probably
God.
part of my problem, but I like to help people because that's in my DNA, I believe. But yeah, no, I think the smart thing, this is what I have seen, and I know what they're doing, is I've seen artists, they've submitted to one show and I've taken a picture and put it in a show, and then they'll submit like a year or two later to another show I'm jurying, and they'll put in that picture that I picked before and then put in 7 new pictures. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty smart. They're like reminding me, oh, you liked this one, remember? And so it's funny. And then and maybe it's psychological, but I'll be like, oh yeah, like that, what? Oh yeah. And then I'll do that. I mean, of course, if they submitted the entire same series, they'd be like, what, haven't you shot a picture in the last 2 years? Like, what the hell? But submitting one old one and then all the new ones, it's like, oh, great, you're like making new work. So that's
Strategy,
all like,
right?
yeah, it was a really good strategy.
Rose, I think you've asked a really good question. I don't know if Rose is still here, but about pay to play galleries. Yeah.
Like you pay them $500 to have a wall in the gallery. Is that what you mean? I see Rose is still there.
Yeah, that's yeah, I was just curious about, because I've seen options where they're like, hey, you can have your own show, and so it would be a solo show, but it's in a gallery, it's not in like a real gallery. So I'm like, does that even matter?
Is it in a real gallery, or is it in like is it in like a clothing store? Like, what do you mean?
No,
really?
it's like there's like one in Hell's Kitchen in New York, and it is a physical space, and it's a gallery. They show art, but I don't think you have to get juried in. You just pay them a
Right.
certain
Or
amount.
you
and get
rent
them on the
it,
show.
right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I'm going to amend my response. Like when, I saw that model come up for the first time about 20 years ago. And I was like, that feels wrong. And now post-pandemic, when galleries are like fighting to stay open, alive at all, I'm like, well, if that's not the only thing they did, let's say that
we busted before posing as an exterminator and how people saw you.
someone's not. Oop.
I love that. I want to know about that extra. I
Yeah,
need that.
Posey, like what happened with Posey? But like I have a friend that rented a gallery in New York, or sorry, in LA, this $3,000 for the month to rent the gallery so she could have a solo show, because she couldn't get a solo show. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. But then she ended up selling a couple pieces and she made her money back. And then so then I started rethinking the model, and I was like, well, if they're not taking huge advantage, maybe, and if they're half the time the shows are curated and half the times they're renting the space, like maybe it's okay. So I'm still sort of thinking about that. I mean, $3,000 seemed like a lot of money for that space, but on the other hand, it's still a space that's known as a photography space. So I don't know, is it okay? I don't know. If that's all they do is like charge artists and it's an obscene amount of money, then I don't think it's okay. Because then, I could just turn my studio into a gallery for rent. And
You better do that, Anne. You better do that and then share us the link on where do we apply. And then as far as pay to play, like, photo contests and things like that, that's definitely something that it irks me a little bit, on people who kind of prey on vulnerable art, quote unquote, artists, where, maybe they would never get a solo show, and there's a reason for that. But I don't know, just weigh it out, right? Like weigh out the benefits versus the non-benefits or whatever. And then, make your choice. Okay. That's a great question.
Yeah. I think they're becoming, unfortunately, I think that pay to play model might be becoming more prevalent in this post-pandemic wake of ruin.
So having a website and or presence among something came in. Having a website and or social media presence, to be really honest, like for some of the larger the juried events, the website is critical because the website is contained within the wrapper that has your artist statement. And at times I have gone to the website, right, to see kind of more work at times and things like that. So I do feel like it's important to have a web presence with your work if you can. And as a photo editor or someone who curates and buys photography, or purchases the rights to publish it, I definitely use Instagram and websites. So now Instagram is apparently changing their model to going towards video from what I'm seeing. And I'm not sure about that. So I really have no clue as to how that's gonna happen. Here you go, Ann. There she is. I told you.
Hi, Stella. Did you hear my voice? Hi, Stella.
Cool. So what else we got? Is there association of photography spaces that are considered legitimate? Oh, that's a good question, Ellen.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, there is, yeah, I mean, there is something called APAD, but that's something different, the Association of Independent Photography Art Dealers, and they have but those galleries are galleries like Frankel and Scott Nichols and Rick Wester and Brian Clamp, and you have to apply and you have to pay an annual due. And so those are all legitimate galleries. Or any of them like places you could submit your work to? Probably you could submit, but they don't have like, I mean, not Frankel, not Haynes, not, there's some you just can't, they're going to find you. That's the thing. They're not going to have any juried shows. But photography centers aren't in APAD because they're not commercial galleries usually for the most part. So
Sonia's got a great question. How much of a priority is placed on how well different bodies of work go together to create a show versus how strong a singular body of work is? That's a good question, Ann.
It depends if you see both. Like I saw someone, I do these weekly portfolio reviews for members, like one-on-one from my office here, the couch. And I saw somebody on Wednesday that had two completely divergent bodies of work. One was color still lives and one was black and white landscapes, and they look nothing together, but both were great. And I didn't, I wasn't thinking I'd ever show those together in a million years. And I've also seen people which have two similar bodies of work that maybe I would mix together, but usually like that doesn't, I don't know. So I guess it's not that important, like photograph what you're passionate about. And if they're two completely different series, they're two completely different series. And if you're having your retrospective exhibition, like one show goes in one room and one goes in another. And I've definitely showed different bodies of work by a single artist. Like I showed Rania Matar's solo show, and she had 3 different bodies of work. And we just used 3 different areas of the gallery to show those 3 bodies of work. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd worry about that. I just photograph what you love.
And then Fran's asking about single image versus series. Is it better to do one or the other or both? So I would say do what's best for whatever you're doing, right? Not everything demands a series, and some things need more than a single. So it's like use the tool, use the approach that best fits what you're doing. Get really clear about your work, what your body of work is. And follow that. I would say, Anne, I don't know about you, but that would be
I missed the question. There's a million questions in here.
So the question was, the question was, can you talk about single image versus series? Is it better to do one or the other or both?
Oh, I think we already talked about that a little.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
All right. So then Eduardo wants to know mixing color and black and white in a portfolio. This is a great question. I'm wondering.
Great question.
I've got my answer, but what do you
You go first.
So in a portfolio, totally, right? I think as long as they're bodies of work or single images, as long as the approach works for the subject and then, or the, whatever you're photographing, and then you can back it up verbally, right? When someone's working on a story and they go back and forth, it drives me insane because it sometimes comes across to me like they just can't make up their mind, and then it just kind of makes me frustrated. I don't know about you, Anne, but
Yeah, I mean, it's subjective, I'd say, but I'm still a purist at the end of the day, that it's like, I've worked with, and Eduardo knows, Jackie Rupp, who we've looked at
Oh,
her
yeah.
India portfolio a million times, and I've seen it printed in color, and I saw it printed in black and white, and I saw it printed a different way in black and white, and then a different way in color. And then she started merging them, and I was like, oh God, no. Then I feel like you printed the color ones that worked in color, and then you printed the black and white ones that looked better in black and white. And it didn't work for me. It didn't feel as cohesive. Like I felt like, I think that's the thing with digital now, that it's a possibility. Like me, like I'm still shooting like a film. And so I had to make a decision. Like I'm going to put black and white film in the camera. I'm going to put color film in the camera. So with digital, you could have it either way at any time. You can change your mind later. And I don't know. It's interesting to me. I still, I was looking at someone's portfolio recently that had, it was like color, black and white. And I was like, ooh. And I was like, color, black and white. And I was like, what happened to these two pictures? Like it bothered me still. But that's, again, it could be subjective.
But there is, like, you did that physical thing, Anne. That's what's funny. I have the exact response. It's like I get lulled into this vibe, and then it's like, whoa, that was not a pleasant experience you just handed me.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are your thoughts on submitting work that is not for sale? I mean, I'm kidding.
As someone who runs a gallery, I'm always like, damn it. But on the other hand, it's like, well, that's an amazing picture. I want it anyway, even if it's NFS.
Oh, the anachronisms.
Yeah. But if it's a great picture, I don't care. But if the whole show isn't for sale, then I get like a little like, how am I going to make
like what's up?
Pay the rent on this? But that's me.
Are there other things that make you cringe? Anne asks Liz.
Any other faux pas that folks should avoid for entering, things that make you cringe? Ooh, are we allowed to talk about that? Oh my God, maybe we should have an after session that's not being recorded for the public, and then we could really break that down.
Don't ask the juror out on a date, right? Like, don't do that until after the show. Kidding.
No, I think she's talking about subject matter, maybe, or printing.
I'm being a total smart ass, like,
okay. Yeah. Oh my God, this is subjective. I'm starting to sweat just thinking about all the things.
It doesn't have to be about subject matter. It could also be about like what you were talking about with the two black and white photos is kind of one type of thing, just other things like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's easier to
like artist statements that are just like waxing and waning and that are like a dissertation. Yeah, don't do it. Short and concise, right?
I'm thinking about all these, like, I have all these nude pictures flashing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't. Now, Anne, why?
Sorry, Liz. We'll have to have a cocktail later, and we'll break that.
All
down.
right, I'm gonna have to throw away all those nude pictures.
Well, just make sure they're good. Like that's the thing. Don't just shoot nudes because you can. Like, yeah. How's that for a bad way to answer that question? So what are your favorite text writers who write about looking? Oh my God. Who are your favorite writers who write about looking at images? I have mine.
Well, there's the classics. We got, what is it? John Berger, is that his name? Okay. It's been so long, I can't even see over there. Oh, Judy's going to get some books. This is good. Get the fresh MFA, get her. Teju Cole, Blind Spot. This guy, oh my God, he can write like, oh my God. So Teju Cole, I highly recommend, and I'll put that in the chat. Yeah. And why don't you all kind of weigh in on that in the chat, right? Because everybody here, I know pretty much all of you are readers of probably great books, but he's the one I'm just loving on right now. But God, I've got so many. I don't even know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Sorry. I know. I have to go in the other room and get my stack. Oh, look, there's the Good
Don't
work.
do it. And stack is actually a whole garage full. Don't
Yeah,
do it.
it's like this other room where it
don't-
all, we have to, yeah, we can't go in there right now.
Yeah. So if you've got a great book of a writer who writes beautifully about photography, put it in the chat.
I mean,
So-
I'm always a sucker for the classic text, and it's just a great text is the John Zarkowski, the Looking at Photographs. I mean, that's like the basic, we all had to get it in grad school. I'm sure there's others over there that are smaller and sweeter.
Well, Camera Lucida, Roland Barthes.
Oh my God, poke my eyes out with the burning stick.
Yeah, so good. So good. I'm not a fan of Sontag on photography, by the way. Matter of fact, so not a fan. But some people like on photography. That is not.
They do. Yes, they do. Yeah. There we go. Looking at, yeah. I'll send some links out.
Okay, cool.
There's also Bill J, if you can find it. J is Occam's razor. It's like a sold out, like if you can find it for less than $100, get it. It's like a little paperback. I have this problem that I'm a book collector, so.
It's actually called a hoarder.
Hey. Someday I'm going to send my kid to college and get rid of all of this.
No, you won't. You will not do it. I get it. No. Sorry. How important is the size of the piece when exhibiting? Jessica does love some of her pieces larger, but printing and shipping costs can add up. And she's recently submitted smaller works. Are there any tips to think about?
Well, a lot of the juried shows will have, and I used to not have a limit at Rayco, and then these pieces would come and they'd be like 40 by 50 inches. And I was like, holy shit, that could fit like 5 pieces in the space that piece is going to take up. I still never put a limit on there. I was like, I will make it happen. Like it might be insane salon style hanging, but I'm going to do it anyway. But we're a little, we have a little less wall space in Carmel. So we have a size limit of 30 inches framed. Like the longest side has to be 30 inches or less. So a lot of places for jury shows will have a size limitation, so you won't have to worry about that. The cost, it doesn't matter with weight on a piece, but when you ship it, it's dimensional weight. So whatever the dimensions of that box are, it just goes up, 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 up. So, it's something to consider.
And also, remember, Anne, when you unpacked that whole show that the person had it framed in glass and it all friggin' broke?
I do.
So like, this is just a little tip. And most of you probably know this, but do not use glass, right?
Yeah,
unless your work is small. Do not strip glass.
And even if you do use glass, even if it's small, use blue painter's tape, not masking tape. If you use masking tape, you're fucked. It won't ever come off. But if you use blue masking tape, or blue painter's tape, you make a blue X on the glass, and that way, when FedEx throws it on the ground
they will throw it. They will kick it.
Throw it off the back of the truck onto the cement, and it won't break because the tape absorbs the shock.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
if you're like, I can't afford to buy the 20 whatever plexi, if you get Optium, it is
super
really
expensive. The museum
and I go sometimes whole hog, and I'll tape the entire piece of glass with the blue masking tape. And then you write all over the box and all over the frame, glass, framed in glass, framed in glass, framed in glass, framed in glass, because whoever's packing it up at the end of the show is going to forget it was framed in glass, and then it'll come back to you in shards. So
sometimes I think they look for those though, and those are the ones they especially drop kick.
They give a kick. They give an extra kick. That's the ones they punch the hole in to make the handle in the box to carry easier.
Yeah, that was a bad day. I remember that one.
That was bad. I have some really funny shipping stories. That's for another topic.
Let's see. Did we I miss anybody, or did anybody?
I think we missed a bunch.
Okay, so let's go.
Let's go back. Let's
Hey,
see. Would you? Oh, wait.
I can verbalize one if
yeah, go for it. Verbalize.
So thank you for sharing all of the great reminders of how to do this properly. But I think one of the main things that it's always been really curious to me is every single submission going to be the same? Do people do that? I have never submitted the exact same submission ever. I always am retooling and re-editing, and so just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, that's good.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I-
good.
I prefer that, especially if, because when you see someone's work repeatedly, like usually they have a style, so you recognize it. And it's like, if you see the same 6 pictures by someone who's, it's like, oh, aren't there any others? Like, there's got to be more. So I like seeing the new ones.
Yeah, mine are, and I submit and jurors, so like I'm never the same. And plus, you change, right, Sarah? You grow, you change, and the work changes, and the way you see it changes. So, yeah, it's all kind of breathing.
Yeah.
Cool, great question. Tony asks, "What's expected in image description versus title and statement?"
Oh, image description. So it depends what platform you're looking
Yeah.
at. Like some places will have a medium, but that could be where image description goes, is the, platinum print, 4 by 5 inches, framed 8 by 10. Like if there's not a space for that, that could be as an example.
Mhm. So Ellen asks, if you weren't selected by a juror, is it worth submitting to the same juror over again if you submit different work?
I think if depending what the payoff will be. I know, like, what's interesting is I've definitely taken work from someone in one show and then they'll submit the next year and I won't take them, but then they'll submit the 3rd year and I'll take it, or I won't, but it's like, you just never know. A lot of what is happening that you don't know is what the other 100 artists have submitted. So
Right.
like at Reiko, I'd put these shows together. Like we used to do this kind of biannual alternative landscape show. Like one year it's like ends up, or the plastic camera show is a better example. Like one year there was like all these really dystopian images and like really awesome urban landscapes. And so then, all these like portraits and trees, they kind of went away because they didn't fit with the whole show, so it depends what else has been submitted. So I think if a juror doesn't take your work in one show, it depends if it's some other show, some other venue, and it's all the other people are submitting other work that might fit in with that show. So,
So it's a little bit of a crapshoot,
it's definitely a crapshoot, but I've definitely taken people one year and not another, or, and definitely, yeah, it really depends on what the other work being submitted is. Because I also actually, because I run a gallery and I install in a gallery, I always think about how pictures work together. So even if it's like 80 different artists, 80 different pieces, I'm still thinking about how they work together. And someone could submit an amazing body of work and it's like, doesn't really fit, right? What am I gonna, and it's terrible. I usually write them a total apology because I really feel bad. Like it's nothing wrong with the work. It just doesn't fit with the rest of the show. And then your problem, and it's my problem because I'm installing it. It's like, where do I put that piece that goes with nothing? Where do I put that? Where do I have a corner I can stick that in where it won't be like, what's that doing in the show?
You would just buy it and give it to me for my birthday.
I have done that.
I know.
But it's a tricky thing. And I think like, I actually love, sometimes when I'm jurying for other places, I let that responsibility fall away just a little bit when I'm like, I'm just gonna take all the pictures I love. And then it's like, oh, some poor bastard's gonna have to install this. But usually
you don't have any interns anymore.
Yeah.
You used to have all those Reiko interns. Hey, Steve Raskin's asking, how do you feel about submitting older work if it fits the call?
I'm fine with it. I mean, I think some contests will have work must be made in the last 5 years or work must be made in the last 3 years. Then obviously you don't send the prints, but I've seen so much great. Like
Anna Delaney is a great example.
Anna Delaney, Mimi Plum, Michael Jang, Ken Light, like all those people. Like it's the time of the archive, right? Lou Watts, like this is what's happened.
Oh my God, Lou Watts. Yes.
The work is great. I mean, but I think this is what happened in the pandemic is we're all trapped in our houses. We can't leave the house. What are you going to do?
Looking at your photos. Whoa.
Like you're going to start scanning your archive, and then there's all this fantastic work from the 70s and 80s, 90s that you never put out there because you didn't have the time because you weren't trapped in your house for 18 months. So I think it's totally fine, and I think it's great. We had some vintage work in our with our own eyes show. We had and Stuart actually bought one of the pieces.
Sure did.
Spacing on that guy's name now, but some really fantastic black and white documentary work from the 80s.
Super cool. Well, the 80s, I'm a child of that, awful time, but.
Yeah.
So Andrew's asking, this is a great question. He has a hard time narrowing down the number of photos. So photographers are notoriously awful editors of their own work. Like it's just how it is, right? It's very rare that you find a photographer who can like cut their work down. So show it to people who you trust. Don't show it to an enemy because they're going to screw you, but show it to someone, who you trust. And hopefully you have a community. And if not, build one through like Camerawork, right? Through CPA. There's a lot of different communities, especially in the Bay Area, right? I mean, I'm still super involved with the Bay Area photo community.
Yeah.
Because it's really unlike any, right? It's not as like cutthroat vicious as New York is or as huge. And people are definitely a lot more empathetic and kind in San Francisco. So that's a great question. Get people to look at it, right? And go to portfolio reviews if you can afford it. And get feedback.
Start your own critique group if you don't have one.
And like there's a great Camerawork has this amazing monthly critique, amazing. I personally believe that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, Christina, forecast. What, you want to talk about forecast?
Oh, what? You're cutting us off. Look at it. We've been like rambling so long.
We're getting cut off. Let's let Christina talk about
take forecast. It away. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. The members' critiques. Our next one is with Sarah Christensen on Tuesday.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah, I just dropped the link into the chat. So, and Allison's going to be there presenting work, so can also tune in and see that. But that is a good opportunity. And now I'm going to share my screen real quick so we can spend the last 10 minutes talking about forecast. I'm going to do just a brief overview and kind of walk through the submission process, which many of you guys probably already know and are potentially in the process of doing. So let me pull that up. Is that visible, Judy?
Yeah, looking super good.
Great. And thank you both. That was incredibly lively. And there are so many tips, also like between laughs, and learned so much. So thank you. So I'm just going to talk briefly about forecast just for the next like 10 minutes. And then I can also stay on a little bit after. I know we're going to end at like 6:30, but I can stay after and try to answer as many questions as I can for you guys. So first off, what is Forecast? Forecast is SF Camerawork's annual juried exhibition that Judy and Anne have already been plugging so much this evening. And for a lot of you guys who've been around Camerawork, it used to be called our annual juried exhibition and was always our summer show. So it's had a long history, although we've recently recalled it Forecast in 2019. And it's been called that for the last 2 years. And so a question that I often get is whether this show is about the weather and the environment. And it is not a show about the weather and the environment. It's an open call. So you can submit pretty much anything for our jurors to consider. So we're accepting all forms of photography, documentary work, alternative process, conceptual work, and then the jurors will curate 5 to 15 artists into the show with an eye towards current issues in contemporary photography. So that's where the name Forecast comes from, thinking about what we can predict or expect as new trends in the photosphere. And each year we have 3 jurors who are on our jury panel, and those are comprised of artists, curators, scholars, gallerists, and arts professionals. And in addition to picking 5 to 15 artists for the exhibition, there also is one artist who's selected as our Jurors' Choice Award recipient. And that award comes with a $1,000 prize. And the past recipients of that award have been Adrian Burrell, who's down on the left side of the screen in 2019. And then Rachel Fine-Smolinski was our award winner last year. So forecast 2021. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you'll receive if your work is selected. Last year, due to COVID, Forecast 2020 was exhibited entirely online as a digital online exhibition. And you can see the landing page for that on the right. It obviously wasn't what we had expected. And many of you guys were applying like in March before that hit. So this year, Forecast 2021 is going to be a blended show. So it's going to be both online and in the gallery. And jurors will be selecting work for both of those things. And I'm going to drop a link, if I can, to last year's forecast in the chat, just so you guys can take a look at what that online exhibition looked like. And then in addition to having the work displayed as part of the blended show, there's also opportunities for a variety of programs. So there's online features on Instagram, artist talks, and panel discussions. So last year we did artist takeovers on Instagram for the month of November with our forecast artists. And then we also hosted 5 different artist panel events. So it's an opportunity to also be in conversation with the artists who are selected for the show, and also to bring in outside scholars and curators to talk with about your work. So for example, last year, Carlos Chavarria, who was one of the selected artists, he was in a conversation with scholar and educator Kim Beal. And then we also had 3 of our artists, Brittany Kathy Adams, Rachel Fine-Smolinski, and Jacqueline Wright, who were in a panel discussion. And the link that I just dropped into the chat, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's an archive of all of those videos, so you can watch them and kind of see what our selected artists last year, what their work looked like. And so this is a recap. The awards and benefits for Forecast is the Jurors' Choice Award, which is the $1,000 prize awarded to 1 finalist. And then the work will be presented in a blended group exhibition featured on SF Camerawork's website and social media, and there will be online opportunities for artist talks and an artist honorarium. And then this year's jurors. For 2021, we have 3 jurors: Marcella Pardo Ariza, Adrian Burrell, and PJ Gubatina Policarpio. And their bios are listed on our website. So I would definitely click through and see, as Judy and Anne were mentioning, kind of what the work is that they make and also what they curate, and kind of do some sleuthing in there. Marcella is a trans non-binary visual artist, curator, and cultural worker. And their work explores relationships of intergenerational kinship, queerness, through constructed photographs and site-specific installations. And they were the recent recipient of the San Francisco Artadio Award. Adrian Burrell, who's in the center, he was our Forecast Jurors' Choice Award recipient in 2019, and he's an Oakland-based filmmaker. And he has work currently up at SF MoMA as part of the Bay Area Walls exhibition, and that'll be up through September 3rd. And then PJ Gubatina Policarpio is an educator, writer, curator, and community organizer, and he works between San Francisco and New York. And he has organized exhibitions for Headlands, Southern Exposure, the Asian Art Museum, and he's also written for Art 21, Art Practical, and other publications. So they'll be reviewing all of the work this year. Last year we had 350 submissions, so it's a lot of work to go through. And they'll be curating 5 to 15 artists into the final exhibition. So for the timeline, Our deadline is July 23rd, which is next Friday. So there's a little over a week to get submissions together to submit. And then once all the work is collected, there's going to be the jurors will have 2 weeks to review the work independently, and then they also will review the work together on Zoom in 2 in-person meetings. So I think that's really crucial, because for a lot of juring platforms, I feel like there's just the ratings are averaged, and at the Camerawork forecast show, there's a lot of time that's spent between the jurors really talking about the work, and there's a lot of thought that's put into the final curation of images. So you'll know whether you are selected in September, and then the exhibition dates will be December of 2021 to close out the year. So finally, how do I submit to forecast? I'm going to talk a little bit about the submission process and walk through some tips for entering. And I'm going to drop a link to the open call on the website too, because I haven't done that yet. So this is the 6th year that SF Camerawork has partnered with Lens Culture to host Forecast. So many of you are probably familiar with that platform if you've submitted previously. And in order to submit to the call, you'll first need to create an account with Lens Culture. And the direct link to that is here. So once you get to the submission process and you've set up your account and you've clicked through the enter button, there's 3 phases that you're going to go through. There's an add photos section, there's an add info section, and then finally there's a preview and submit. So for forecast, you can submit up to 10 images. And we highly recommend that those images are all from a single body of work and that they're cohesive. Anne and Judy have already talked a lot about this, but sometimes we'll get 3 images from 3 different series, and it's very hard for the jurors to consider that work. So I would highly recommend 10 images from one series, and to make that leading image a strong image. In Lens Culture, you can view everything cohesively as a whole. So you can see all the images, all 10 at once, and you can also click through and see them individually full frame. And then there's space for a title, there's space for an image description. And someone asked about this earlier, but in that image description section, I would definitely put information about the print type and also the image size, which is really important in terms of the curating the show for the gallery. And then this year is the first year that we also have space for video. So there's an option to submit 1 video file, and the video must be hosted on YouTube or Vimeo. And we're also not considering any videos that are longer than 15 minutes. And then in our add info section, which is the second section, there'll be a section for project title, project statement. I would definitely highlight what Judy and Anne said about keeping it concise. When it gets way too long, when you're reading 350 submissions, that it won't be remembered and it'll be glossed over. In Lens Culture, like Anne also mentioned, the artist statement, the project statement and the artist bio all sits on the side of the screen so that the jurors can view that as they're viewing your images. So it'll show up with all of the images as they're reviewing it. There's also a section for an artist's CV, and I know that some people have had formatting issues for the CV. So if you do have a link to your website, you can insert that into the CV section. And then the artist bio, it says it's optional, but I would highly recommend that you write something into the artist bio because it's definitely read. And you will have the chance to review your submission in step 3 before you submit. And you will also have the ability to continue to edit your submission up until the deadline. So just because you've hit submit doesn't mean that it's all finalized. So I would definitely recommend that you submit early and then return to the platform to continue editing your submission up until the deadline, because then you don't have to worry about accidentally missing it. You might just have to worry about a piece of it not being the way that you wanted to if you're working up until like 11:59, but it'll be in there. And then finally, for the entry fee, this is also a new thing that we're doing this year, which is that there's a $35 fee for non-SF Camerawork members, but the submission is free for SF Camerawork members. So all current members have been provided with a discount to their account. And so when you go to checkout, you'll see your submission is free up in the upper right-hand corner. And if you're a member, I would also highly recommend that you submit early. And if you want to check in on your membership status, also check in early and not on Thursday, because that's when everyone will be checking in. And I might not get back to you. I will try my hardest. And the other thing to know is that the email that's attached to your SF Camerawork account and the email that's attached to your Lens Culture account must match. And in the day and age of multiple emails, sometimes they don't, and then there's like 24-hour period that's required to apply the discount to your account. So definitely submit early, especially if you're a member. And that was the final bit. So I don't know if there's questions in the chat, because I don't know my chat box open, but
Yeah, Steve has one.
me?
Steve wants to know what's the difference between an artist bio that isn't in the CV. It's a great question.
The artist bio is typically more narrative. So in there, I would put a more narrative description about yourself and your kind of artist statement, different from your project statement. And then the CV will have more of like your past exhibitions and education, and be more, yeah, formulaic.
Like a resume.
Like a resume. Thank you, Anne.
And then one body of work can occur over a period of years for most of us. So how does this get defined?
Trisha, do you want to clarify a little bit? Are you thinking in terms of that it needs to be new? I would say the work doesn't need to be made within a specific time period or like within the last like 5 years, within the last 10 years. It says focusing on new trends and also like emerging photographers, but we've had work in the show before. We've had Polaroid work from the 70s that had kind of been like the artist had rediscovered the Polaroids that she had taken 40 years ago, and it was shown in a new light. So I wouldn't say that there's a time period that the work needs to be created.
I think it's super awesome that you're having online too, right? Because like Anne had a show, I entered and I wasn't accepted for the wall part, but I was for the online part, and it got a lot of traction. So, you know, it's not a bad thing. I mean, you know, everybody really wants to have a print on a wall, but like more and more people, you know, galleries are having online parts as well, which is really awesome, I think. And it just gives you a little more bang for your buck. What do you think, Anne?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. You also, I was just reminded, you got one on the wall too that's like sitting here in my closet.
Oh, really? Oh, I forgot. Okay, thanks. Better come get it.
But you know, what's interesting is I mean, it's a weird thing since the pandemic that, you know, we have always had two sections of our member show and our international show, one like 45 online, 45 in the gallery. I sold more pictures online than I did in the gallery because people were looking at it all online anyway, because no one was leaving their house, even though the show was on the walls in the gallery. So people were calling and being like, hey, can I get that Rebecca Sexton Larson picture? And I was like, oh, the one online, sure. Like then I'd have to call her and be like, can you frame this and send this? It actually worked great in a weird way. Cause I think now everyone's like, before they'll even leave the house, right? They go and they look at it online. And then, so people bought things sight unseen, like, which was great. Because I think also Artsy has made people really comfortable buying things online. It's like, well, it looks good on Artsy. Like, yeah, I'll get that.
So that's awesome that you're doing that, Christina.
Yeah, we're really excited about hosting things online and in the space. And last year, definitely with the online exhibition, it kind of expanded the work that people were able to present. And so people submitted 10 images, but the images that ended up being on each of the artist pages was much more robust and gave for kind of like a fuller picture of the artist's work. Are there any other questions from people? You can also feel free to unmute if you want to ask them directly yourself. And also they don't have to just be to me. They can also be to Judy and Anne about other things.
I have a question. I am no longer a photographer. I was a photographer in the 70s, and I have dug into it for the last year and exposed a little bit on Instagram. And there's been quite a lot of support and interest. And my question would be, should I look at bringing out my work into the light in a different way because I'm no longer a photographer?
Can you ever be no longer a photographer, Anne? Is that even possible?
I think that's a good, it's like being an alcoholic, right? You're one forever.
No, Anne, Jesus.
Not in my case, not in my case.
I mean, so what's the question? Is it
should I have a different approach to showing my work than what is being discussed here? Because it's 40 years old, and I am no longer a photographer. Does that matter that I'm no longer a photographer?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I haven't made a picture in a very long time now, but I mean, people still want to see the old work. I think Instagram's a great way to put it out there, but I think I saw your question about entering files instead of prints.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be here. I'm still waiting for all the master files to come from the person who is going to do the printing.
Right.
So I won't be here to meet that deadline.
Right. Files is totally fine. That's because it's a digital platform that they're looking at, the jurors are going to look at. So everything will be digitally viewed.
Yeah. So the idea is to go up to 10, right? The series I want to show, ideally, is 33 pictures of the same subject. Because then there is a whole story and then it makes sense. But I'm willing to bring it down just to get attention and then hopefully get more.
Yeah, no, 10 is great. Well, like Bill Yates, he had that Sweetheart roller rink work that was from the 70s, and they're so great. And then he submitted to Critical Mass. Somebody saw it. The Radius ended up, was it Radius that did the book? Somebody did a book of that work. It sold out immediately. The New Orleans did a show, a whole, the New Orleans Museum of Art, I believe, or the Ogden Museum of Art did a big solo show for him in New Orleans of that work. I mean, and that work is more than 40 years old.
Yeah, this CBGB work, Erwin, I was there actually in the 80s, in the early 80s. So this is pretty important work, I would say, as a document to that club that's gone.
Because it's the look I brought to it was very different from pretty much what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, very nice.
So it's kind of a new look on it.
And
there is so much to say about it now. fully.
So you definitely need to get it scanned. You need to get the work scanned digitally, not just printed.
We are doing that now.
Okay, good. Just make sure it's
Rob
scanned.
Ryder is doing the work, so I'm very good hands there.
I would also look for a writer too.
Oh, I'm doing that too.
Okay.
And-
Got check.
Every day, yes.
Right.
New ideas pop up, and
You should check out Patty Smith. I bet if you could.
I'm trying to, but I'm big admirer of her work and of her personally. But how do I get in touch with her?
On Instagram, try to message
I
her.
tried, but she
Didn't work.
It's okay. We'll get to her in some ways.
Yeah, I believe that. I like that tenacity. And that's good, y'all. I mean, have that tenacity because
Yeah, it took me 40 years to have it, but here we go. I mean, I had a class, I was in a class in those days, and the girls had nightmares about my work. And as a result, I kind of buried it because I didn't know how to make sense of it even myself at the time. And it's only with a lot of distance that I started to dig into it and started writing, reading stuff. And then I realized, oh my God, this is fantastic. And then one of the guys who was following me used to write for the New York Rocker, and he was a musician. So he would say, oh, this is this person, or this is that person. I had no idea. And they all have interesting stories of their own. So it became enriched as a result.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Anyway, thank you so much. And I'm going to keep quiet now.
Trisha wants to know if you can combine plastic images with mirrorless images in one body. So listen, again, if it makes sense, right? And it can go together, if it goes together and you can describe what your goal is for combining things, then go for it. If you can't, if you're just I can't decide, therefore it's all going to go in there, no, don't do that. You want to have a recipe for what you're trying to say, right? Or what you're trying to elicit. You want to have a goal. What is your mission statement to be like corporate? God, that sounded so gross. I'm so sorry about that. But what, right? What is your goal? Really have that in mind with the work, with your entry and all of that. I mean, that's usually, I have this sheet when I work with people, it's called a SMART goal. It sounds so friggin' stupid, but it works, right? You can just Google it, SMART goal, PDF or whatever, and you fill it out, and it just really helps you kind of figure out where you are in a number of different ways. And it sounds, again, kind of silly and juvenile, but it works. And then Steve wants to know if there's a bias for particular print size or limits for forecast.
We don't have a limit for forecast for print size, but I would probably recommend not to make it too large.
No 40 by 60s? God.
No 40 by 60s.
I did that once, but the show was in a friggin' mall in Dallas. That was vacant.
24 by 36.
24 by 36. What do you say, Christina? Going once?
Better.
I'm negotiating.
Yeah, I know.
That's funny. What about you? What about you, Sonia, Allie? Any questions? Eric, you good? Yeah. Oh, Eric, right? You brought up the East Bay Photo Collective. I saw you guys have a space now.
Yeah, they just got a space. And also they have, we have, I guess, monthly work reviews, which knock on wood will start being in person, but have been online. They're online. So if you join EBCO, you can do the monthly work reviews and monthly photo walks, which are starting to become in person. It's a really great resource for folks who aren't just in the East Bay,
right? Yeah.
but for everywhere. We've got members from San Francisco. We love everybody in the Bay Area. It's
well,
all
this
good.
is Camerawork, so we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole there. I just thought I would throw it in there. Sorry. All right.
Is there anything else, or is that our evening?
Diddy, go, Allie, go, go, go.
I'd like to thank you and Anne for such a thorough for such a thorough look inside how judges think, what they look for, what's important, what's not important, what will help and hurt your chances. It's not often that we have this opportunity, and plus it's been very funny. You're both a riot, and it's clear that you are very fond of one another, which really makes it's a tremendous. The two of you are terrific together, and Christina, brava for knowing that and presenting, having them both work together. It was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I agree.
Thanks.
We got to do more things together, Judy. A little more
Rock
collaborating.
on!
Next member jury show, CPA, you and me.
Woo-hoo!
I'll break the rule. We'll do it again.
I'm down, man. Get the band back together and take it to CBGBs, Erwin. Wow.
I will. Don't worry. Hopefully. Thank you.
Well,
all right, y'all. Well, have fun. Apply for, submit to forecast. Get in there. You know, you got a great resource in Camerawork. And Christina, thanks so much. Anne, I love you.
I love you. I miss you.
You too.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Nadine. See you
Bye.
later.
Thanks for inviting us, Christina.
yeah. I hope you have a
Bye. Bye, Debbie. Bye,
Thank you,
Marcy.
Bye,
Bye.
Good to see you too.
Bye, Phil.